Good evening. Settle in, breathe, and let this one hold you. Have you ever touched an object and felt a whisper of foreign sand between your teeth, as if it carried a life you never lived? I never believed such things. I had read explorers, claims that artifacts chose their keepers and dismissed them as romantic nonsense. Until tonight. I found myself tracing the edge of a gold-veined scarab necklace in the quiet halls of the British Museum. The moment my fingers closed around it, something in me shifted, an invitation, or perhaps a warning. And so, my story begins with a single rule I always kept, until the scarab asked me to break it. Every Thursday night I walked the same path through the Egyptian wing, clipboard steady in my hands. The familiar numbers against the glass calmed me, each checkmark a rhythm that ordered the day. I liked the rules, the quiet satisfaction of them. But that night, something shifted when a faint glint of gold tugged at my eye from a display labeled, "New Acquisitions, Uncatalogued." It shouldn't have been glowing. Museum lights stay fixed, steady, even harsh. Yet, this object pulsed softly, as though mimicking a human heart. I leaned closer, telling myself it was a trick of old fluorescence. But then, in the glass, the scarab seemed to tilt its carved head, turning toward me. My training said one thing: report anomalies. But my hand acted on its own, brushing the latch. The metal projected a warmth it had no right to hold in a climate-controlled room. Footsteps echoed briefly behind me, then faded, leaving me alone with the thing leaking its quiet, impossible glow. The lock gave way too easily. I lifted the necklace into my hands, its weight deceptive. Gold vines clasped the body of a scarab cut from stone dark as midnight, its wings threaded, with mineral veins like a map of scattered stars. As it settled in my palm, I swore it claimed the space there. A slip of sand fell through my fingers onto the marble floor. Sand did not belong here. Nor did the smell winding suddenly into the sterile museum air. A fragrance of crushed blossoms, dust hot from stone. I froze, heart pounding. In the same breath my sight doubled. I still saw the quiet glass-lit gallery, but superimposed over it bloomed another place. Sun-colored walls, a street humming with voices in a language I could sense more than speak. I'd read about things like this before, not in polished reports, but in the scribbled margins of old diaries, travelers and explorers hinting that certain artifacts chose their holders. At the time I dismissed such notes, treating them as eccentric brushstrokes on the edges of history. Yet here I stood, pulse racing, while sand accumulated around my shoes. I realized then the scarab had laws of its own. It thrummed brightest when I let go of rigid control, and its glow seemed to quicken at the edges of hidden paths, as if guiding me toward thresholds no eye alone could find. And though it rested quietly in my palm, I sensed it required more than possession to respond fully. Trust, mine, offered freely, was the cost and the key. Part of me still whispered to return it, to set it back in its case and seal the moment closed. But the heat of the scarab pressed more deeply into my skin, spreading an eerie certainty through me that my choice had never really been whether to hold it. Some doors remain waiting for centuries, then yield to a single touch. The air thickened. Glass, marble, electric hum, all dissolved in an audible breath, as if the world itself drew in sharply. I blinked, and sandstone light flooded my vision. The ground beneath my feet shifted into warm grains that collected against my ankles, rising fast, swallowing the cold London night. And then, the world burst outward. The sand fell away, revealing a city alive in heat, scent, and noise. The heat met me first, firm, immediate, and nothing like London's damp chill. It pressed against my chest, steady as a hand holding me in place. I stumbled forward, still brushing grains of sand from my sleeves. As the streets around me thickened into form, Cairo breathed. and the scarab at my throat answered, its thrum spreading through my veins like a drop of ink unfurling in water. My senses quickened. I tasted the sharp iron of the sun, heavy on my tongue. Spices curled in the air, cinnamon, smoke, cardamom, mingled with grilled meat. A fountain clattered nearby, water striking stone in a rhythm softer than footsteps. And the voices, braided murmurs of Arabic, French, Greek, rose and fell like one body breathing. For a moment they blurred into sound alone, then clarity opened, and I understood them as easily as my own thoughts. The marketplace unfolded before me in color and motion, too much at once, yet made seamless by the scarab's pulsing rhythm. A vendor lifted a copper pot, its rim flashing in the hot light. Cloth hung in folds of indigo and deep red, drifting in the faint stirring of air. A boy darted past, his laughter bright, weaving through figures who paid him no mind. It could have overwhelmed me. Instead, every piece wove itself into a pattern I could follow, the necklace making me part of the fabric, thread among threads. I reached toward a stack of carpets and let my fingertips press into the wool. Its prickle caught my skin, but another layer pressed close, beneath and beyond. I felt the memory of hands dyeing the threads, heard the rhythm of a loom, sensed a voice humming, soft as breath. The scarab gave me more than language. It stitched me into the echo of history itself, binding me to life still trembling in objects. For a heartbeat, it was unbearable in its beauty. But beauty shifted quickly into unease. A weight drew me sideways, pulling at the edges of ordinary streets and bending my gaze toward narrow alleys, where sunlight stalled before the shadows. The necklace grew warmer against my collarbone, urging, not a command but insistence nonetheless. Every instinct told me to stop, to seek official hands, to explain. Yet those thoughts dissolved, like threads caught in smoke, each time the scarab pulsed. I followed. The sound of the market thinned, replaced by older air, thick with stone and dust. My boots dragged across uneven ground, scraping whispers from stairs worn smooth by centuries of feet. The scarab burned hotter now, tucked close like a hidden ember. Still, I wasn't alone. Behind me, soft creak of leather, a knife butt rhythmically tapping against a belt. I stilled. The flare of heat from the scarab confirmed it. Sharp presence. Near. Deliberate. I turned slowly and saw her. Her frame was cut against the narrowing alley. Vest fitted close. Sleeves rolled to bare, strong forearms. A scar whitening its way through one eyebrow. She lifted her gaze, and when she found the necklace at my throat, her expression shifted with something heavy. Not surprise. Recognition. Old, as if she had waited for this moment. I knew her face before she spoke. Recognition struck like a premonition. You took your time, she said quietly. The stones around us seemed to lean close. My heart clenched hard, not from fear, but from the certainty that the scarab had not brought me here for a ruin or a relic. It had brought me here for her. The necklace softened then, content, as though its purpose was complete. Not only to guide me, to introduce myself. My lips moved before I thought. Who are you? She exhaled, a half-smile forming. Hana. And if you've any sense you'll hand over that necklace before it gets us both killed. The warning should have sounded sharp. Instead, I heard the offer curled within it, layered beneath suspicion. Because here, among foreign merchants and endless trade, a necklace like mine could never be innocent. Artifacts did not arrive untouched. They carried too many hands, too many claims. The scarab throbbed once more, quiet now, pausing as though it waited to hear what I would choose. I held her eyes, breath caught at the threshold of something I hadn't expected. And in that silence between us, her gaze flicked lower, weighing the clean lines of my dress, my unmarked boots. Details I hadn't yet realized marked me as foreign. Hannah's hand shifted toward the blade at her belt, but her eyes never left me. She studied the scarab's glow at my throat, as though it carried an insult she had witnessed 100 times before. "Another thief," she murmured, the words worn with use, but they carried more weight than the accusation alone. She tilted her head, scanning my clothes, my straight posture, the neat academic lines I hadn't thought to question until now. Her jaw tensed. Then, softer but steadier. "I've seen how things vanish. Lovely things, sold and renamed until no one remembers where they belonged." Her suspicion slid into me like a knife edge. I wanted to speak, to tell her I wasn't here to take, but the scarab startled us both before I could. The light pulsed, sharp as a flicker of breath, shadows climbing across her cheek. Hannah still. She didn't gape as someone untested might. She measured it, brow drawing tight. "Artifacts stir. I've seen curses spark, lamps flicker." Her voice flattened, almost calm. "But I've never seen one answer like this." She stepped closer, circling, each movement precise. "Why you?" The scarab hummed in my chest, a vibration deeper than sound, and I clutched it instinctively. Warmth bled into my fingers. "No one sent me," I whispered, even as my throat tightened. Her eyes narrowed as if tallying each word for deceit. "Everyone's sent by someone." Her tone curled bitterly around the memory she didn't name. "Dealers say it's for study, for preservation, until the gold changes hands." Her words burned because they belonged to truths I'd read in ledgers, but never felt in flesh. She was not guarding herself from superstition, but from what the Empire did with beauty, turning it into coin. A sudden scrape echoed down the alley. I flinched. Only a cat darted from a broken crate, but I felt Hannah watching me instead of it, noting how startled, how I did not run. Her gaze pressed against my stillness, urging a test neither of us voiced. I swallowed and said the only thing that was true. "It showed me your face. In the sand. Before I found you." Her breath shifted, almost like a laugh swallowed back. For a blink her scar caught the light, drawn softer by memory. She looked away, but her grip on the idea betrayed her. I knew she had heard such stories before. Fragments carried by family, maybe. From lamplit nights when legends were safer than confessions. The air thickened suddenly. Shouts rang closer, heavy boots beating stone, louder than the street itself. The scarab cooled against my skin, the glow shrinking into itself, like an animal wary of hunters. Hannah hissed under her breath, something harsh and private, as if cursing her own instinct. I saw the decision settle in her shoulders, even before she moved. Instead of stepping back, she seized my wrist. Her fingers were calloused, grip unyielding. "Run now," she ordered, already pulling me toward a half-collapsed stairwell that hid in shadow. The command left no room for argument, yet something in it was more protective than hostile, as if she was wrestling with two truths at once. The boots struck closer, echoing sharp after her words, hammering the alley with each step. The safe house smelled of old paper and time, a mix both brittle and sharp. I leaned hard against a crooked table, while Hannah barred the door with the ease of practice. Light slanted through a single dusty window, catching on the scarab that rested in my hand. Its veins of gold looked duller now, and when I tilted it, I saw a fine crack running across the stone wing. "That wasn't there before," I whispered. My throat felt scraped, though I hadn't spoken since we fled. Hannah tossed me a canteen without turning. "Of course it wasn't." She shrugged off her vest, and as she moved I caught sight of a leather cord at her neck. A smaller scarab charm hung there, its surface webbed with lines of fracture. Magic isn't free, it takes. I uncapped the canteen. The water slapped against my tongue, tasting bitter, charred. I coughed. What exactly is it taking? She crossed her arms, eyes lowering to the charm she rubbed with her thumb. At first it's the smallest things. A memory of taste, maybe. The feel of your mother's voice one morning. The smell of your own room on a rainy night. But the deeper you lean on it, the more it hangs. Small things give way to years. The canteen slipped in my grip. I scrambled inside myself, testing what might already be gone. The sharp blue paint on the museum's doors. My neighbor's Tuesday whistle tune. Still there, though quieter, like ink thinned by water. Hana glanced up, her face unreadable. The gift of tongues, that trick of understanding, that was its first price. An early trade. She let the charm fall back beneath her collar, the motion heavy with habit. I've seen other keepers. A coin, a bronze buckle, a feather, trinkets they passed on after the artifacts broke them, always with cracks, always with loss. A draft slid cold through the window cracks. My fingers trembled against the scarab's floor. There must be rules, limits. Ask the museum labels, Hana said, her smile dry. Magic keeps no ledger, it's sand. Take a drink and still it dries you out. Dark crept toward the glass. The scarab felt heavier in my hand. No longer precious but fragile. Yet I thought of how it pulsed when we moved together in the alley, and something in me tightened. I asked her, barely able to meet her eyes. What has it taken from you? Hana paused so long I thought she'd refuse. Then she spoke, quieter. The smell of my grandmother's bread. The name of my first dog. Her fingers brushed her charm again. It hurts worse near you, as if it feeds on what sparks between us. I sucked a breath, remembering how the scarab had shown me her image in London before we ever met. If it lived on connection, then every glance was fuel. What should have frightened me instead made something inside me settle. I stayed because I wanted to know her, even at a cost. I turned the scarab over once more. The crack glinted like a warning. Hana shoved a bag of figs toward me. Eat. Hunger makes the drain meaner. I tore one open, sweetness cutting through the ash. Watchful by the window, Hana checked angles of sight as if born to these walls. The scarab hummed faintly in response, not to guide, only to acknowledge. We both avoided one question, heavy in the air. What happens when there's nothing left to give? But Hana's movements stayed sharp, and my own mind honed itself when I studied the scarab's carved script. We were steadier together, even as that steadiness fed the very danger we carried. Hana pinched the lamp dark with her fingers. The last trace of glow from the scarab flickered once, then quieted, leaving only the hush of gathered night. And beyond these walls, I could already feel the desert, holding its own breath. Waiting. 6. Tomb of Whispers. Moonlight threaded down the canyon wall, catching the tomb's entrance in silver and shadow. I lifted my hand to the carved symbols, and under my fingertips they shifted like loose sand. The scarab at my throat turned cold, its pulse dragging through my chest like a warning. Beside me, Hana crouched low, knife ready. The scent in the air was not only stone, it carried something older, faint residue of oils or herbs long set aside. My senses sharpened with the scarab's rhythm, urging me nearer, though part of me wanted to turn away. The doorway gave no sign of force. No crack of chisels, no scars from collectors' tools. In the archives I'd seen the record of careless hands breaking doors for treasure. But here the surface lay unbroken. This wasn't meant to be pried open. It felt more like a question. I had to answer, or not enter at all. I slid the scarab into a hollow at the center. It fit like it belonged, clicking into place with unnerving precision. For a breath, nothing moved. Then the earth trembled, dust shook loose, and the door began to shift. Not scraped stone, but the grind of metal deep within, as if a hidden mechanism woke after centuries. The air spilled out, stale and warm. I coughed against it as we stepped inside, torchlight cutting across murals still bright with color. A woman of power knelt in profile, her hand extended. In her palm rested a scarab carved in the same design as mine. Hana sucked in a breath. This isn't burial art. Heat flushed through me as the truth reached my skin. My hand clenched around the necklace, now alive again with steady warmth. It was made to be given back, I said softly. The words carried like a vow, clear even to my own doubting ears. I thought of the museum's ledgers, of papers that catalogued and confined wonders into cases with numbers pinned like insects. Yet the mural pulsed with another story entirely. Not a hoarded treasure, a trust, a cycle. These chambers read like a record, not a trove. A memory for people who had built, not one for those who claimed. Hana stepped forward. Her boots scraped against something that rang too clean against stone. A flat disc spun lightly, etched with fine lines. She bent instinctively. Don't, I tried, but her fingers brushed it already. The walls shuddered and split with sound. A slab slammed down in front of us, choking the air with dust. The scarab flared hot in panic, light scattering across carvings overhead. They weren't embellishments at all, but warnings. Lines the scarab could only half unwrap. A language of danger and restraint. Hana hacked against her cough, grit streaking her cheek. She didn't waste words, only tightened her grip on my wrist, grounding us both. We pressed deeper, following the hesitant glow guiding us. Each passage narrowed and shifted, grand rooms folding into plain hallways. Murals changed too. Less gold, more hands at work. Carvers bent to stone. Tools passed palm to palm. A scribe hunched beside scrolls. The story bent toward the makers as if insisting they be remembered. The scarab tugged at my chest, pulling me to a smaller alcove. A shallow basin waited there, dark with still water. The mural above showed a scarab lowered into such a bowl, light spreading in ripples. I understood. The necklace had not been guiding me to a sealed vault, but to its true place of release. To keep it was to distort its meaning. To let go was the task. Hana drew closer. Her calloused fingers brushed the basin's rim. You felt it too, she said. Not accusation, just a quiet certainty. The scarab hummed between us, low and regretful. I reached for the clasp at my neck. My fingers shook, caught in the decision, when sudden torchlight flicked against the walls ahead. Voices stirred in the chamber's throat. Heavy steps closed in from behind. The hunters had found the open door. The altar stood in the shallow pool of moonlight, and my heart kept time with the scarab's restless pulse against my skin. Its veins flickered hot, then cold, as if caught between choosing me or releasing me. My breath counted itself, 1, then 2, as Hana pressed a knife into my palm. Her fingers brushed mine, longer than they needed to. We could fight. Or we could run. Figures filled the threshold, rifles raised and voices sharp, but I only saw the broad man at their front. His smile was not about us at all. It was for the scarab. I knew the type. Men who saw beauty as a weight in their pocket, not something living. My fingers clenched on the hilt. The scarab dimmed in answer, as though recoiling from my anger. Hana's elbow pressed lightly against mine, grounding, recalibrating. Beyond us, a mural hovered in memory. A queen's outstretched hand, the basin waiting. That moment came back so sharply I almost swayed. The scarab had carried me from London, but not for escape, not for possession. It brought me here. The soldiers raised their rifles higher. My choices narrowed in the beating of a second hand. I could use its magic to blind them, to break reality open one more time. Or I could listen to what it had shown me since the first whisper, that these objects chose, and their choosing asked for intent, not greed. In the silent pull of that basin I understood. This was not a weapon. It was a covenant. The chain stuck as I unclasped it, not with rust but with reluctance. The intruder thought my pause meant surrender. He called out, even laughed. I closed my eyes though my body shook. 1 breath. 2. This was not abandonment. It was returned. I stepped to the altar, and lowered the scarab into my palm. Its weight grew until my arm quivered. Somewhere in my mind flickered the fragments I'd read in Explorers' notes. The whispers that artifacts answered their keeper's will, not their strength. That basin, carved and waiting, was built as an answer. If my intent was to protect, it would hear. Hana's whisper met my ear. Lyra! A rifle cocked. The man's grin widened. I let go. At first, silence. The water shivered around the necklace, light threading out in thin lines, brightening as the scarab sank. Then the chamber exhaled. Not wind, not tremor, just a release. The leader lunged, thrusting his hand toward the basin. The surface resisted. Golden light coiled around his wrist, and in less than a breath his body stilled. His voice caught, unfinished. His figure thinned, blurred, and then was undone. Not torn. Not broken. Simply released back into dust and silence, as if the tomb had decided he did not belong. The others faltered. One shot ricocheted, dissolved before it struck the floor. Then they broke, torches clattering as they fled back down the passage. Beside me, Hana's hand found my sleeve. You knew, I shook my head. I only knew it needed to be returned. And that taking was never meant to keep. The words came hollow but true. I thought of collectors, vaults, the way the Empire renamed what it could never carry. This chamber answered that theft with judgment, with memory restored. The murals came alive with the glow, bright as if repainted. Hana traced the crack along her own charm, and I saw the edges soften, though they did not heal. They had served their place. Above us, carved roots lit faintly, fanning outward. More paths, more altars waiting, unseen threads of guardianship stretching far beyond this night. I breathed in the quiet, the scarab's pulse absent now, but something of it was still inside me. Between us, I felt a steadier rhythm, not borrowed, but ours. Stone groaned low around us. A shift of air carried faint smells. River water, a whisper of rain. The tomb was closing its door. Work completed. Hana tugged me toward a narrow passage the chamber revealed. Voice dry but gentle. Come on. The world isn't finished with us yet. I glanced back only once. The basin lay still and glimmering. Scarab vanished. Water folded into calm. Not destroyed. Not lost. Just elsewhere. Waiting. And as we stepped into the dark, I felt the ache of its absence, and the faint stir it left behind in my hand, like warmth after touch. The sand quieted when I let the scarab go. I thought I'd feel hollow, like something leaving me behind, but instead, my palm tingled. Heat lingered where it had rested, stubborn as evening air that clings long after the sun is gone. I saw it slip beneath the basin's surface. The carved wings spread for one last breath before the water covered them. There was no plume of shadow, no burst of sparks. Only stillness, as if the tomb had drunk deeply and been satisfied. And then, while the last fleck of gold dissolved from sight, something pressed into my hand. I didn't look right away. My fingers closed gently, already knowing the shape. Raised wings, shallow grooves. A scarab, but small enough to disappear in my palm. When I opened my hand, it gleamed plain metal, light as a coin without magic thrumming through it. Hana was at my shoulder, her own charm cracked and dulled. She touched it once, then glanced at the one left for me. Hers held scars from use. Mine was quiet, unmarred, as if newly cast. I realized then this wasn't a replacement. It was the remainder. Stories stirred at the back of my mind. I'd read about artifacts fading but leaving fragments behind. A witch's ring turned to ordinary silver. A dagger becomes plain iron once its vows are met. I heard myself murmur softly, maybe only for me. Objects keep their stories. Sometimes they leave a sliver so the story can be told. Proof, not power. The ground shifted under us. Dust trickled from the ceiling as the chambers groaned, a long sigh of stone. The place wasn't collapsing, it was closing. I felt it in my chest. The guardian had returned, and the tomb no longer needed to guard itself. Hana caught my wrist firmly. Move! We ran. The charm warmed faintly against my skin, nothing fierce, just a steady calm. No visions, no strange tongues, only certainty that the bond was finished. The corridor shivered as we passed. Glyphs flaked into dust, erasing their own record. Ahead, a thread of silver grew wider. Not our torchlight. Dawn's color, soft and gray, seeping through new cracks in the rock. An exit not carved before. Final gift, I thought. One last door opening because I had listened. The air met us cool at the seam. We slid through, and as my shoulder cleared the stone, I paused. The rock ground shut behind us, sealing the path, as if the cliffs had remembered how to hide it again. Not vanished, only hidden. Hana bent forward, breath loud in the chilled air. When she straightened, sweat traced over dust on her cheek, but her grin flashed small and fierce. No magic left, she said, flicking her eyes to my fist. Just wait. I opened my hand under the newborn light. In quiet study, I saw the grooves catch pale dawn, the way the chain coiled itself, smooth and closed. No clasp. It could not rest on my neck. It was meant to be carried differently. From the valley below rose a woman's laugh, gentle as water over stone. The call of morning work, steady and human. Hana brushed the back of her hand against my arm before stepping toward the sound. Practical, warm. I didn't follow right away. I lingered, palm resting over the charm once more. It didn't glow. It didn't speak. Still, its presence grounded me, a small, ordinary weight I could keep. Proof that it had been real. The wind shifted, carrying scents of mint tea and bread rising. The kind of ordinary comforts Beirut journals never could capture, yet fuller than the hush of tombs. Hana's voice floated back toward me, playful in tone, but edged with sincerity. Coming? I slipped the charm into my pocket and stepped toward her. Closer now to the world of lamps and ledgers, I knew this piece of metal would be my only witness. And yet, already, it was enough. The empty display case gleamed under the museum's dim nightlights, its velvet interior still neat, untouched. I traced the edge with one finger, no dust, no smear, nothing out of place, as though the scarab had never been there at all. The night guard passed behind me, his flashlight beams skating across the glass without pause. To him I was just another researcher working late, nothing unusual. My throat felt bare without its weight. I touched the hollow at the base of my neck, half expecting warmth, but my skin was cool. Cairo's heat, Hana's laughter, the streets we ran, all of it wavered at the edges of memory already, slipping the way sand drifts out of a fist. Sometimes great events blur when you return to a world unchanged. The museum hummed quietly, and I could almost believe I had never left. In my pocket, I turned the small charm between my fingers. It hadn't warmed since that night, but the ridges felt sharper now, carved deeper as though memory itself was pressing them into me. I should catalogue it, assign the proper line in the records. I had already flagged it on the paperwork, one of many provenance unknown acquisitions with a blank where a name should sit. It would vanish into that system, one more object the institution could not place. But instead of writing the description, I moved slowly past the cases toward my desk. Every object I passed looked different now. A vase wasn't only clay. I could sense hands that had smoothed its rim, and heard the echo of conversations it once overheard. All of them are alive beneath their silence. At my desk, the drawer stuck as I pulled it open. My notebook lay inside, where it always did, but when I lifted it the paper smelled faintly of cardamom. I have never kept spices near this place. The scent was impossible, yet there it was, as if a page had been dusted with memory itself. I flipped through quickly. Sketches stared back at me, murals of wings and basins, drawn in my hand, though I did not remember the motion of making them. And then a folded slip fell from between the pages. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was bold, forward-leaning, nothing like mine. London's rains must feel dull after our desert. If you ever miss the heat, find me at the cafe by the old souk gate. Bring decent tea. The stuff here tastes like boiled dust. No name followed, but no name was needed. I could hear her voice even in the curve of the letters, her tone dry, playful, weighted with truth. The note was not magic. It was hers, tucked into a place I might one day find it. Another proof that some connections resist unspooling, that ink and paper can carry what even memory cannot. Outside, the first streaks of dawn bent across the museum dome. I breathed in. No spice, no dust of desert, only London's damp stone and yesterday's stale coffee. The night guard's keys jingled faintly down the corridor. Soon others would arrive, and the museum would fold back into its ordinary order, case labels and marble floors erasing the night. I folded the note and slipped it into my shirt pocket, right over my heart. The charm followed, its weight light but steady. Together, they felt less like possessions than reminders. Not power, just tether. The guard appeared in the archway. "You're here early," he said, casual, already moving past to begin his rounds. I touched the pocket and smiled without effort. "Just finishing up." The museum's hum continued around me as I sat at the desk. I drew one clean page from my notebook, steadied my hand, and began writing the quietest letter I had ever signed. Not out of haste, not out of loss. A choice. A closing of one chapter before another breath could begin. Birdsong drifted in faintly from outside, threading through cracked windows, soft enough to lull the rooms. The air smelled of polished wood and stone, but beneath it, clinging still to my collar, there was the faintest trace of desert wind. And so the story lingers, an object gone, its weight replaced by something harder to name. The scarab was never mine. It only borrowed my hands for a time, and tonight, in the quiet between us, perhaps it borrowed yours too. That's the secret objects like this keep. They do not ask for owners, only for keepers of a moment. One glance in a museum, one breath lingering in the dark, and suddenly you hold the weight of centuries. My story closes where yours might begin, with that gentle tug towards something unexplainable. Maybe the next whisper will be yours. If this small warmth found you tonight, subscribe quietly, so these stories can return to you. True legacy lies in choice, not conquest. Breathe deeply now. Let this thought be your last before sleep.